Good morning, friends, or as we say, Ascalica. Watch your mind, Maharja. It's a bit of a breeze picked up this morning. It's beautiful, it's sunny, but there's a bit of a stiff breeze blowing in from the west. So I've got my nice Condor jacket on that I got from Battlefield Vegas a few years ago. I went to the range there, shot a few guns for the first time. A few handguns, a few fully automatics too. It was a lot of fun. But hopefully the sound is okay. I saw the camera wobbling a minute ago. Need to figure out the tripod situation, make it better. But I'm not the most technical person on the planet. Well, today I wanted to talk about being a man. What is it to be a man? Because in this world that we live in, there are a lot of conflicting ideas about what a man is, what a man should be, what a man is meant to be. And to be honest with you, there's a tarp blowing around over there. Let me sort that out first, because that's going to annoy me. It was actually good timing because the train just went by, so we missed that. The kids have a little shelter across the garden and they have a tarp so it blows in the wind every now and then. Little squirrel jumped across the tree there. I love spring. Anyway, what does it mean to be a man? And I want to first say that all I can do here is talk from my experience and what I have learned about being a man in my life, and how that probably contrasts with today's popular opinions on what being a man is. So, where to begin? Let's get a bit of backstory first. So, I haven't always understood what it means to be a man. I've not always been good at being a man. Actually, I would say that up until a few years back, I was doing a pretty poor job at being a man. And there are many reasons for that. Some of those reasons have to do with growing up without a male role model, without a man in my life, or any men really. And I know a lot of you young folk out there today find yourselves in a similar position. So for me, my dad spent my childhood in prison, so he wasn't there. And he got out of prison when I was 10 years old, missed many of my formative years. And while he was in prison, I had my mom. She was a single parent. I was around her a lot. And her support network primarily consisted of my aunts and my grandparents. My grannies, most specifically. One of my granddads passed away when I was a kid, when I was only 3 years old, so he wasn't in my life, unfortunately. My other granddad was a very quiet type, didn't speak a lot, wasn't very present. He was a silent type, so he didn't have a lot of input into my life. So the few times I did see him, he wasn't really there, really. And it meant I was around women a lot growing up. And that impacted me. And then when my dad got out of prison, not long after that, we joined a cult. Long story for another video, perhaps. But when my dad got out of prison, first of all, we had a lot of discord in the family. And our family was vulnerable in many ways. And that discord was created by this institutionalized person being released from that institution and having to try to reintegrate with society and with a family. And there was a lot of trauma around that, a lot of difficulty, a lot of challenges. These are things that people don't teach you about, right? So we had to figure it out as a family on the fly. We didn't always do a very good job of that. But my dad and I never had a great relationship even after he got out of prison. So even then, he was never really a role model for me. Whose fault was that? Mine, his, is neither here nor there. Oh, and someone is hammering. One of the farmers is out repairing a fence or something. I always choose the best moments in the day to do these videos. But there was that. Then we have the tarp blowing over again. And as a man, I must go and repair that problem. Well, I set a log on top of it, so that should do it. As a man, of course, I am very stubborn. And that is one thing I've never had a problem with. Men can be stubborn, and that can be a good or a bad thing depending on how you aim that stubbornness. But yeah, I didn't really have many role models as a kid, no male role models to speak of. When we joined the cult was very much about castrating the masculine, getting everyone to stand in line, to do as they were told, to be obedient. It was heavy on the indoctrination, heavy on the dogma, and being a cult, if you didn't follow along with those things, they would oust you from the cult. They would isolate you from all of your support network that you've built up in the cult. They would shun you, and you would never be able to connect or talk to those people ever again. And that, unfortunately, is where my wife and I found ourselves when we left the cult later in life a few years ago. So we lost a lot of our network, a lot of our family and friends and whatnot. So being in the cult also didn't lend itself to having male role models, because he was surrounded by these castrated men, figuratively speaking, of course. Although some of them, I don't know. Looking back, you wonder. And while in the cult, being a cult, the cult's idea, the cult's goal is to control, right? So a lot of people ask me, Paddy, what's the difference between a religion and a cult? Some religions are cults, but not all of them. And it very much has to do with the idea of control. What level of control does that group wish to exert over you? So it could be an academical, organization, or a sport, or a community, or maybe it could be a religion, or a group of friends. Those things could all be cults, because a cult is characterized by the amount of control it wishes to exert over one or more people. Stephen Hassan, in his book Combating Cult Mind Control, great book by the way, talks about microcults. So it could be even in a friendship of two people. You could have like a little cult scenario going on there. But all that aside, because the cult wishes to control you, one of the ways in which it does that is it isolates you from all of the people you knew before joining that cult. So you cut off ties with your family and your friends and your cousins and your aunts and your uncles and all those people. So when we did that, that reduced even further the male influences I had in my life. Now, I'm not here to tell you all about me and woe is me and this is what I went through. I only use this as an example and to illustrate this is where I was in terms of manhood. I didn't have a very good example growing up when it came to being a man. I had a few teachers at school, and one or two of them, they set good examples. I'll tip my hat to them. Those teachers set good examples, and those examples were few and far between, so I really, really appreciate that looking back now. But outside of that, I didn't really have anything. So I didn't know what it was to be a man. No one showed me. No one told me. No one said, Paddy, hey, you need to take responsibility. Paddy, you need to look after people. Paddy, you need to be strong. Paddy, you need to be reliable. No one told me any of those things. And of course, the only input I had was television. And television, by and large, has always taught us that a man is the butt of the joke, is the silly guy. It's a caricature, really. Homer Simpson from The Simpsons. That's kind of like the image of a dad or a man that popular media likes to portray. Not always, of course, there are exceptions, but for the most part, in my experience, that's what popular media has done. So everywhere you look, no examples of what it means to be a man. When there are no examples of what it means to be a man, you as a young person, me, anyone else, how are you supposed to know? You grew up in ignorance. You do not know how to be a man. What then do you become? Well, for some of us, we become overly feminine, especially if you associate it with a lot of women growing up, especially if you had a lot of feminine association or influences growing up, whether that be your aunt, your grandmother, your mother, your sisters, whatever. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in balance. Everything has to have a balance. And for me, there was no balance, and the scale tipped extremely in the side of the feminine. So I have no shame in saying that I grew up with a lot of feminine tendencies. When I made friends so much easier with women than I did men, because I guess I identified more with women. I was very happy to take the back seat. I didn't really like competition, confrontation. I didn't like displays of strength. I kind of shied away from responsibility. I'm not saying that those things characterize women, but that's what I would do, and I can pinpoint it being as a cause of not having a manly influence in my life. Fast forward a few years, I have kids. I've been married a few years. And I realize, hey, I'm a dad now. What does that mean? I didn't have a good example of being a father. I had to figure that out. Who's going to show me how to be a father? And if you're going to be a father, you have to be a man. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, and this channel's tiny, so chances of anyone even seeing this are almost zero. So it's not going to be an issue anyway. But if anyone drops in here and they see this, and they're aligned in a certain way, or they're of a certain persuasion, they'll probably be like, Paddy, this is sexist, this is misogynistic, white male supremacy, etc., etc. Go ahead, that's fine. But please know that you are part of the problem. You're part of the reason that men don't know how to be men, and that we've mixed up the gender roles in society, and that women feel like they have to be men, and men feel like they have to be women. And look what that's doing for us. It's working so well, isn't it? This actually has come off the back of a conversation I had with my wife earlier today. And it was a very honest conversation that we had about our experiences growing up, being in a cult, escaping the cult, and learning about who we are and finding ourselves over the past kind of 7 to 10 years. And one of the things we realized was, like, my wife was very masculine in ways, and I was very feminine in ways. And we decided, hey, I'm not going to be a woman no more. And she decided she wasn't going to be a man no more. Or at least fulfill those roles, and we were going to swap it back to the way it should be. And we have to combat that every now and then, because once you've been indoctrinated and you have these things ingrained so deeply in your soul and your heart, your mind, you can't just root those out and toss them aside. It can take years. So every now and then a little thing creeps up and I'm like, I know what you are. Get out. So what does it mean to be a man then? Well, it took a long time for me to figure that out. A lot longer than I would have liked. But being a man, first and foremost, means taking responsibility. And a lot of people don't like to hear that, especially young people, because it's easier to say that's someone else's problem. Nothing to do with me. I ain't fixing that. Not my responsibility. That's the easy way out. But here's the thing, guys. Men don't take the easy way out. Men do the hard thing. Men do the right thing. Men, real men, do the good thing. And nothing ever worth doing or nothing good has ever been easy. So taking responsibility. Responsibility for what? Well, first of all, responsibility for yourself. What does that mean? Responsibility for your education, for being in the know, for informing yourself, for being healthy, for being capable, for supporting yourself. Because if you can't take responsibility for yourself, become dependable for yourself, look after yourself, how are you supposed to do that for other people? It's like the analogy of when you're on the plane and they go through the safety announcement and they say when, in the case of emergency, when the air drops, secure your own mask before putting someone else's on. Because if you try to put someone else's mask on, well, you're not going to be any use to anyone if you faint or go unconscious all of a sudden for lack of air or oxygen. Same thing applies here. Personal responsibility. And this doesn't just apply to men, it applies to people in general on some level, right? But for men particularly, take responsibility. Are you in a really bad place? Are you going through a lot of difficulty? Were you dealt a bad hand of cards by life? Well, that's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to get out of that if that's what you want to do. And that's what a man does. A man realizes that it's their responsibility. No one's going to do it for them. They need to take action. And they need to take action now. And keep taking action until they are where they need to be. Because then when you're able to take care of yourself, you're able to take care of your family. You're able to take care of a woman. You're able to take care of your children. And those aren't easy things to do. Those are hard things to do. So it's best that you start looking after yourself first. Become strong. Become wise. Become intelligent. Teach yourself, educate yourself, learn from experience. Go to the gym, work out, lift weights, do cardio, go running, whatever it is. Move your body. Your body, it was designed to move, to do things, to work. Unfortunately, we've gotten away from that. Much work these days does not require your body. It requires your mind and your fingers, and that's it. And that leads to a lot of problems of its own. So get out there, start moving things around, start moving your body, get your blood circulating, get healthy. I like to say, the heavier weights you can lift, the more you can bear upon your shoulders. But it starts with you. It starts with learning to lift smaller weights. This doesn't have to be physical weights at the gym. It could be figurative weights. It could be dealing with smaller problems at work, smaller problems in your family, in your community, in your school, and your wherever you are. And little by little, those build up, and you become stronger, and you can deal with bigger problems, and then bigger problems, until you are a very capable and responsible man. And that is a dangerous thing. That is a dangerous thing. And that scares people. A responsible man, reliable, strong, dependable man, that scares people. It scares society. It scares the government. It scares employers. It scares a lot of people. And they shouldn't be scared, but it scares them because that kind of person is powerful. That kind of person, that's a man of action. That is a man who gets stuff done. And in a world where so many people don't get anything done, that scares people. So, but when the proverbial feces hits the fan, who does everyone turn to? The person who gets stuff done. To the responsible, dependable, reliable man. So, I hope that helps. I don't know if it does help anyone, but if you're young and you're trying to figure out what does it mean to be a man, and you have a lot of conflicting information out there, people telling you should engage your feminine side, you should open up to people, you should be emotional, you should be okay to cry, talk about your emotions and your feelings and what you're feeling on the inside, and It's okay to be weak. It's okay to take a few days off to yourself and to mope. I'm not saying any of those are bad things. I'm not. But everything has its place, its time, and should be taken in its own measure. What I mean by that is a lot of those things are fine in and of themselves, but when it becomes so extreme that that is all we do, we focus on just those things, well, that's when it becomes unhealthy and unmanly. And as a man, you're designed to be a man. And when you go against that, that goes against what you're designed to be. And that can cause problems of its own. And I'm speaking from experience here too. I'm not just making this up. I've noticed that in my own life. So, that's what it means to be a man. To me, anyway. I know this is a very unpopular opinion, especially in today's culture and society. But to all you young men out there, I hope you can find a good, strong, dependable male role model for you that can help you learn to be a man. If you don't have one in your life, look for one. Look for a teacher. Look for a colleague. Look for a mentor. Look for someone who you can look up to and say, that is a man. He takes care of his wife. He takes care of his children. I want to learn from that person because that is the kind of person I want to be. And finding those role models can be the first step to learning what it means to be a man. Don't take my word for it. I'm still figuring a lot of this stuff out. Like I said, I grew up without a man in my life to show me what it means to be a man. So I'm just telling you my experiences. I'm not telling you this is what you should do. I'm telling you what this means to me. And maybe some of it will resonate with some of you. But the best thing you can do is go and find out for yourself. Because that's what men do. Again, taking responsibility. It's not my responsibility to tell you what it means to be a man. I'm happy to do that. I hope it helps some people. I hope it sheds light for some people. But it's your responsibility to go find out for yourself. Maybe that's the first step in you becoming a man. Is finding out for yourself what that means and who can teach you. So find that person. Good luck on your journey of learning. And being a man, I better shut this thing off and get back to work. So I'll finish off my English tea out here. It wasn't too windy. Calmed down a bit. The birds are a bit quieter this afternoon with the wind going. So I'm going to finish my tea off, go get some writing done, get some marketing done, and get packed for heading to the United States tomorrow. I have a long flight ahead of me. I think it's like 9 or 10 hours, so that's going to be fun. And I'll, of course, do a few videos while I'm over there. Until next time.